this recording started, and then I'll pull up our video that we're going to watch for this week.
Wait, Annette didn't go. Did she?
I thought she did. Yes.
Did you go, Annette?
No.
You did say a few things after he
5 years from now, I don't know. Right now, I've had this prayer request before, but now it's getting a little more serious that I finally reached out to the pastor in Atlanta, Georgia, that asked me a couple of years ago if I would think about maybe start going to join his church and start a deaf ministry. So yeah, that's still my prayer request. I have a couple of things I need that along with that prayer request that I need to get done. But up till now, financially, it's been hard, but it's got to get done. And that is that the stupid government requires me to apply for guardianship over Malahia. Now, if I do it on my own, or even if I go with legal aid, they're not going to go with me to court or do anything except help me fill out the paperwork. It's going to cost me $250. If I go with a real lawyer, I've asked a couple lawyers already, it's going to cost anywhere between $2,000 up. So yeah, it's kind of dumb about, once the child turns 18, that you as a parent have to apply for guardianship, but it's got to be done for Malahia.
What would happen if you didn't apply? This seems strange to me.
Then she'd be an adult, and I've been fighting, and I've been able to keep it. I've been able to go with her to the doctors and do her banking and everything, but eventually they want that legal paper that says I can take over all her affairs, that she's not capable of doing her own banking, and that she can go to the doctor and make her own decisions. Well, let's see, Malahia thinks about a 5-year-old, so how well will that go over her going to the doctor by herself? It's just.
So if there's nobody else trying to become her guardian, like.
Oh no, her dad gave her up long time ago when he walked out of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you didn't do anything on this, would you become a ward of the state, or what would happen?
Yeah. So they could legally take her away from me and put her in a foster home.
Okay, well, yeah, that's terrible that that's even a possibility when it's obviously your child. She obviously loves you and wants to be with you. So that's weird, but we'll pray for that.
Yeah. So that's where my 5 years stands right now, is mainly praying, should I start this? Like I said, I'm going to be 57 tomorrow. Should I start this brand new career of being a deaf pastor in Atlanta, Georgia, in a place I've only been to Oregon and Washington, as far as living, and I've spent one winter on the mainland, and that was in 1984. So that'd be a whole new up and move. I guess Kyle probably knows what that feels like. But it's a lot easier when you're young. You just have Marley. You don't have any kids to have to think about, you probably already had your job coming over here. But I'm going over there with nothing. No job, no house, no.
Would he allow you to do it remotely by Zoom or something?
Who?
The guy that's going to hire you to be the deaf pastor.
Oh no, you can't do that with deaf people.
You can't do the sign stuff? No? Okay.
Right. Because it's starting from ground zero. It's going door to door. It's finding the deaf. It's bringing them to church. It's writing cards and welcome letters and
Oh, it's a whole operation. Okay.
Yeah, it's starting from ground zero. I mean, I wouldn't even be able to do it on Zoom. He doesn't even know the deaf. He wouldn't be able to give me their address or phone number, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody, no deaf people in Atlanta.
Okay.
So
All right. Well, we'll add that to the prayer list, and we'll definitely keep that in our prayers. All right. Meanwhile, okay, I think it's about time for us to start our video. So let me pull that up here. Just a second. This is pursuant to last week's. It's just the part 2. Let's talk about the possible explanations from the the facts that we saw last week. Okay, I think I gotta hit share screen. That's right. And then we'll do this. Blah blah blah. Get it going. Can you guys see it? Okay. Okay. Just get the quality maxed out here. Sure.
It's a matter of historical record that Jesus of Nazareth died and his body was placed in a tomb. It's also been firmly established that after his death and burial, his tomb was found empty. Various individuals and groups saw appearances of Jesus alive, and his disciples somehow became absolutely convinced that Jesus had risen from the dead. These are the historical facts. How do you explain them? Down through history, various naturalistic explanations have been offered to explain away these facts. Let's examine the 4 most popular ones. First, the conspiracy theory. According to this view, the disciples faked the resurrection. They stole Jesus' body from the tomb and then lied about seeing Jesus alive, thereby perpetrating the greatest hoax of all time. However, this theory faces overwhelming objections. It's hopelessly anachronistic. It looks at the disciples' situation through the rear-view mirror of Christian history, instead of from the standpoint of a first-century Jew. Jews had no concept of a Messiah who would be defeated and executed by Israel's enemies, much less rise from the dead. In Jewish thinking, the resurrection of the dead was a general event that takes place only after the end of the world and has no connection at all with the Messiah. The conspiracy theory also fails to address the disciples' obvious sincerity. People don't willingly die for something they know is not true. An honest reading of the New Testament makes it clear. These people sincerely believed the message they proclaimed and were willing to die for. For these and other reasons, no scholar defends the conspiracy theory today. A second attempt to explain the facts is the apparent death theory. Jesus didn't really die. He revived in the tomb, somehow escaped, and managed to convince his disciples he was risen from the dead. This theory also faces insurmountable obstacles. First, it's medically impossible. The Roman executioners were professionals. They knew what they were doing and made sure their victims were dead before taken down. Moreover, Jesus was tortured so extensively that even if he was taken down alive, he would have died in the sealed tomb. Second, this theory is wildly implausible. Seeing a half-dead man who crawled out of the tomb, desperately in need of bandaging and medical attention, would hardly have convinced the disciples that he was gloriously risen from the dead. As a result, no New Testament historians defend this theory today. A third explanation is the displaced body theory. Perhaps Joseph of Arimathea placed Jesus' body in his tomb temporarily because it was convenient. But later, he moved the corpse to a criminal's common graveyard. So, when the disciples visited the first tomb and found it empty, they concluded that Jesus must have risen from the dead. Once again, this theory cannot make sense of the facts. Jewish laws prohibited moving a corpse after it was interred, except to the family tomb. What's more, The criminal's graveyard was located close to the place of execution, so that burial there would not have been a problem. Also, once the disciples began to proclaim Jesus' resurrection, Joseph would have corrected their mistake. So, once again, no current scholars endorse this theory. Finally, the hallucination theory. The disciples didn't really see Jesus, but just imagined that he appeared before them. They were all hallucinating. This theory also faces considerable problems. First, Jesus appeared not just one time, but many times. Not just in one place, but in different places. Not just to one person, but to different persons. Not just to individuals, but to groups of people. And not just to believers, but to unbelievers as well. There is nothing in the psychological casebooks on hallucinations comparable to these resurrection appearances. Second, hallucinations of Jesus would have led the disciples to believe at most that Jesus had been transported to heaven, not risen from the dead, in contradiction to their Jewish beliefs. Moreover, in the ancient world, visions of the deceased were not evidence that the person was alive, but evidence that he was dead and had moved on to the afterworld. Finally, this theory doesn't even attempt to explain the empty tomb. Thus, the four most popular naturalistic theories fail to explain the historical facts. Where does that leave us? Another possibility is the explanation given by the original eyewitnesses that God raised Jesus from the dead. Unlike the other theories, this makes perfect sense of the empty tomb, the appearances of Jesus alive, and the disciples' willingness to die for their belief. But is this explanation plausible? After all, it requires a miracle, a supernatural act of God. Think about it. If it's even possible that God exists, then miracles are possible, and this explanation cannot be ruled out. Surely it's possible that God exists. So how do you explain the resurrection?
All right. Let me make sure I got it shut off here just a second.
Welcome to the Veritas Forum, engaging university students and faculty.
All right. You guys hear me again? Okay. All right. Any thoughts on the video?
For starters, I think it's this week I've been trying to read passages, just like leading up to Jesus's death and resurrection and like preparation for Easter. So I don't know, it's just cool to look at this while I've been like reading into that. So yeah, initial thought.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. It's really good leading up to Easter for us to all be thinking about this a bit.
You should have played it up as if you planned this one, Steve.
Yeah. Next time.
I had it all mapped out.
What was the four challenges to the resurrection again? It was what? Hallucination, displaced body.
Conspiracy.
He didn't actually die. What was the first one?
There was they go by different names. Was Swoon Theory one of them? Swoon, I know Swoon is the one where the idea that he was really beat down, but then he didn't quite die, and then went out, and then I think that kind of is what you're referring to. That he swooned, so it was like he was dead, but then he came back later. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, but there's four theories. I only listed three. I can't remember what the other one was. I know hallucination. He didn't die. His body was.
Well, let me pull it up and.
Yeah, his body was moved.
It's It's a matter of historical record that Jesus of Nazareth died and his body was placed in Israel's enemies, much less
I want to
rise
skip
from
to
the
the end
dead.
where it just shows all them.
In Jewish
Is it towards the end?
It should have been toward the end when it showed all of them in a list format. I think that would help just a review of the video.
Yeah, how many minutes back do you think that was? Within the past minute, the last minute of it? I'm just scrolling through it and seeing if
It must have been within the past couple minutes of the end, but it's not super important. If just put it on mute and then skip through it. But maybe, I don't know, like I
go
think,
ahead and screen share, we'll run it again and jump around.
yeah, that might be helpful.
I found it. It's the conspiracy theory, the apparent death theory, the displaced body theory, the hallucination theory.
Yeah, conspiracy theory is the one that I was forgetting, where everybody just made up that the body wasn't there and they're all in cahoots.
Yeah.
Which I think most agnostics and probably most atheists would also think, probably think about the conspiracy theory being like the most probable. If they believe in the, like general text of what was happening, they're probably not going to think that he didn't fully die, because yeah, that theory is pretty ridiculous. Like, he was beaten beyond recognition. So if I saw someone like that come up and say, I've risen, I'd be like, dude, you didn't die. You're just like severely maimed. Like, you haven't really risen in a very glamorous way. Let's put it that way. Yeah. I feel like it would have been mentioned a little bit more.
I think, man, the theme that I've been getting the last couple of weeks as we've been going over these is just the pure reality, and that these texts exist, and they are so, I don't know, like, they're historical texts, and if they're true, it changes everything. And yeah, and so, just getting, I think I love wrestling with these topics, and, man, it's like, how do I get other people to realize that this is out there, like the Bible is there and it's like a real document. And again, if it's true, it changes everything. So I don't know.
Absolutely. I did something, and I got a little strip of your videos, the three of you, but I want to restore it to full screen. I was wondering, do you guys know how to do that? I don't know what I did, but I got it all just a strip of 3 videos off to the side.
I mean, you're not just trying to like regular share your screen?
No, I'm just trying to get back to normal.
Oh, you're trying to get it off your screen.
Is there a button that says stop screen sharing?
I just want to get back to, right now, I don't have the full screen. I just want to get back to full screen, and whoever talks there becomes the pin, like the background.
I think in the top right corner there's a view tab.
That's exactly where it is. Yeah. Top right corner for me too. But I have this app in full screen for me on my laptop.
Weird. Okay. There, I got it back. I just had to click on the Zoom icon down below. It all went back to normal. Okay. Back to talking about the video. What other thoughts? I mean, I kind of zone. Sorry, I'm being distracted. There's an alarm going off out there. What other thoughts came to mind as you were watching that? I know it seemed to me one thought that came to my mind was it would be super hard to do a conspiracy in this situation with that many eyewitnesses of the whole event. You know, it's the idea that it never happened. How could you convince people that something never happened? It's just there's just how could you let's look at it the other way. How could you convince so many people something happened which didn't happen if it was that public and involving so many important people and so forth? So I think there's a lot of theories that if you just think it through, you can like eliminate them right off the bat,
Yeah, for something to not be true and for it to be carried on for century after century after century is just, I mean, as just my piddly human thinking is absurd, like this is something like it's got to be legit because it stood the test of time, and especially in those like formative years, like say the first century or two after Jesus was alive, like for that, yeah, I mean he was a polarizing figure, that's for sure. So
Yeah, and there's lots of phony messiahs throughout history that it was sprung up a little movement and then it died real quick, just faded out real quick because people realized, okay,
right.
wasn't a messiah after all. But this one blew up for some reason. Blam! Within 15 years, it was all through North Africa and Europe. It was all over the place. Asia, parts of Asia, most of Asia. It exploded like that because there was something going on that was more than just another hustler trying to pull a scam. What other thoughts came to mind as we were watching through that? A couple things I think were notable was like James and Paul were hostile. Like James, during towards the end of Jesus's ministry, it looked like James and Jude were kind of skeptical still. They had like that incident where Jesus went down to the festival and I forgot what, but his brothers said something, kind of smart assy. So it seemed like they didn't believe, like even James, his brother, his half brother James and Jude didn't believe at the point of the crucifixion, or their belief was shaky. They believed to a certain point, but they seem to have changed once they saw him resurrected. These hostile critics, Paul and James, they seem to have switched over. And it takes a powerful experience for that to happen when they're like kind of hostile, especially Paul. James, it was like a little debatable, but with Paul, he was out there killing Christians. He was getting them killed. He was rounding them up. When he was in Damascus, when he was on his way to Damascus, when he had his conversion experience, it was to have Christians rounded up and killed. So it's good. I think it's important to think about the mindset of these people, that hostile mindset that Paul and James had, especially Paul. He was like the number one Christian killer at that point. It would take.
You explain what James was going through in terms of like debatable hostility. Not incredibly familiar with him.
Okay.
Also, was he not Jesus' brother? Wasn't Jesus' brother called James? Or what was his brother's name called?
Yeah, his half brothers that we know the names of are James and Jude, among the disciples, right? Those two Jameses, right? So yeah, let me look up something, scriptures that show James's flakiness or lack of belief.
Yeah, cool. Would he have written about it in his own book, like James? Or is that even the same guy? Is this a case of like two people called James and
That is the same guy that wrote the book of James.
okay.
That's not where
Okay.
the scriptures I'm referring to, though. Just give me a minute to do a little probing here.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna be right back. I gotta use the bathroom.
Okay. Okay, so the John 7, 3 verses 3 through 5 are the ones I was referring to. And I'll quote it. It says, Jesus' brothers said to him, leave Galilee and go to Judea so that your disciples there may see the works you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you're doing these things, show yourself to the world. For even his own brothers did not believe in him. It says it pretty explicitly there. We're
So
notified.
he was hiding the fact that he was a believer.
Say again?
Was that in summary just him hiding the fact that he was a believer? Is that what that verse is kind of getting at? Or did I listen to that wrong?
No. It's his brothers being skeptical. They knew he was something, but I don't think they knew quite to the level of what he was. They didn't realize he was God, actually, you know. They knew he was something special, but I'll read it again. Jesus' brothers said to him, leave Galilee and go to Judea so that your disciples there may see the works you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you're doing these things, show yourself to the world. For even his own brothers did not believe in him. So I think the fact that they were discipling with him means they believed to some extent, but I think what they mean by they didn't believe he was God. They didn't believe he was maximal, the Messiah that was God incarnate, right? So then there's, you know, there's parallel reference in Mark 3:21 and so forth. So now we have, I don't know if you folks have brothers, I do, but there's a sense of competitiveness with siblings where you're not going to give them credit for being God unless they really earn that. You know what I mean? I ain't calling my brother God on any flimsy basis. That's for sure. You know, and I think that was probably how James and Jude were. They were like, okay, we've seen you do miracles. Maybe you're a prophet. You know, something like that. Or maybe you're a holy man. You're this and that. You know, but I don't think they were ready to go, oh my Lord and my God. You know, until they saw the resurrection. So I think that is very powerful, you know. So Kyle, I found the verse we were looking for. I'll read it again. It's John 7, verse 3 through 5. It says, Jesus's brother said to him, leave Galilee and go to Judea so that your disciples there may see the works you do. No one wants to become a public figure. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you're doing these things, show yourself to the world, for even his own brothers did not believe in him. So it says,
so they were saying that to Jesus. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused by that verse. Who were they speaking to?
Okay, I'll mention where the quote ends. So Jesus' brothers said to him, quote, leave Galilee and go to Judea so that your disciples there may see the works you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you're doing these things, show yourself to the world, end quote. And then this is going back to the narrator says, for even his own brothers did not believe in him, which was John, you know. So, and Kyle, you were in the bathroom when I was babbling about what I think they believed he was something. They believed he was a holy man, a prophet, something, but I don't think they believed he was God incarnate. And the resurrection was what convinced them, oh, my Lord and my God, this is him. This is the God that created us. This is God incarnate, you know.
But this verse just illustrates the doubt, right?
Yeah, that was just a reference to the doubt. And then there's a parallel verse, Mark 3:21, it says virtually the same thing. Yeah.
Cool.
So there was
Got
something
it.
of doubt.
That clears it up now.
Yeah. And you know, they don't get super specific on exactly what kind of doubt it was. That's my guess, is that they obviously, since they're following him, they know he's something. We hear other interactions. It seems that they're respectful to him in general, but I just think they didn't believe in him. What John is saying is they didn't believe he was God, right? They didn't believe that maximal thing, you know. I don't know. But key thing that I'm pointing out though is that, you know, Kyle, if Aaron said, I'm God, you'd kind of be skeptical about that, right?
I was literally just about to say that. Yeah, like that relationship is like, it's like, nah, there's no way, you know? It's so personal.
Mhm. So the fact that James and Jude got flipped, along with Paul and all the rest, flipped into, not just believing he's God, but willing to go to being ostracized, tortured, and killed for it. To me, that implies a lot. They knew, they were super familiar with him. They would have recognized if it was an imposter. There's these people that have a twin theory. That Jesus had a twin. I think they would have recognized it even if it was a twin. So anyway, it's just.
And it probably would have been mildly documented at least a couple times that maybe he has a twin. Like,
yes, good point.
Yeah, like
kind of would have been public knowledge, you think?
probably, right? At least mentions of it from some reputable source.
Mm-hmm. And not just his brothers, but his mother recognized him as the resurrected Messiah. So
she's in on it too. Big conspiracy.
Yeah. So can you guys think of any theory, given the facts that most scholars accept, like we talked about last week? Can you think of any theory that might account for him that is not the resurrection? Any naturalistic theory? Because I've racked my brain and I can't think of any that is plausible. They all have to be ludicrous. I can't think of any that I think would actually work.
Conspiracy theory is not, like, I would say, disproven. It's just incredibly, like, at least I couldn't personally disprove it. And that's because I think you need to start mapping these people who saw him out, like mapping this all out. People who saw him resurrected, right, after his death, references as to different scriptures that are quite, validated. So like talking about super early manuscripts, the earliest ones that talked about him, and finding all those people within those texts. And then you'd have to, like, really know your stuff to really disprove that conspiracy theory, which is why I think so many people are comfortable believing in the conspiracy theory, because, like, it's all those, like, key pieces are still very abstract for them, and they're also abstract for me. However, there's, like, steps of faith that I'm taking, and just, like, I think I'm comfortable to say that we're all kind of taking some steps of faith in believing this, because I don't know, I don't think we're super good experts on this, but I think we could get better, but I don't know. And then you have those agnostic people who are absolutely not putting, one, steps of faith into this, or two, effort into learning about it. And so that's why they just kind of naturally lean into that conspiracy theory idea of, like, well, they all just got in on it together and, like, kind of agreed with it, or, paid off the right people to write about it, or I don't know, like, maybe they even want to say that it was a government thing, or early deep state, who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yes. It would seem like, in 1 Corinthians 15, he references over 500 people that were eyewitnesses, and kind of dares them to go talk to them about it if you don't believe me, So it seems like there's a lot of eyewitness support that'd be pretty massive conspiracy to get all of them on the same page. Because not only do they have to lie that they saw him resurrected, but they'd have to have memorized all the phrases, all the words he said, and who was with the group here at the Lake of Galilee, and who was with you in the inner room and Emmaus, and who was over here, and all the stories would have to be coordinated and, matching and harmonized. That's a lot of stuff for a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And get people to comply perfectly with.
If it were one local group of people, I would say it could be pretty easily believed that it was, like, a cult instance, right? Like, just a group of people who are very, very invested deep into this.
Mhm.
And those people will go to death about a lie because they don't want to admit to themselves that they've been believing a lie, right? Like, you know, the sunken ship cost theory, where like you will double down on an idea even if you are seeing that it's wrong, just because you've already invested into it and like don't want to admit that it's wrong. And
Like
like
what the government is doing right now.
yeah. But yeah, they'll just double down into like a thing. And yeah, if it were one specific group of people, I can see that happening. But considering that it was segmented people with like Paul, right? Like kind of a radical outsider at that point. He was killing
Hmm.
Christians. So
Yeah, you made a reference to sunken ship theory or something like that.
yeah, sunken ship cost.
I should know that. What is that? Sounds familiar.
Like, or sinking ship cost, right? So like it's not sunken yet, but it is a sinking ship, and you
Like
are
into bailing it versus.
Yeah, instead of like calling it quits and just like jumping off and getting away from it, you are commanding your people to, you know, you're sticking with it, you're doubling down, even though it's very obvious that there's like you're probably wrong and there's probably not much hope, right? And like in cults, oftentimes those people will follow a cult leader and they'll see things that aren't right, but like ignore it because they've already like sold all their property, or they've already you know, invested their entire lives into this, and they can't face the fact that they'd be wrong.
Yeah.
Like consider the stuff in Waco, or like all the other cult instances where just people sell all their things, live with each other, and then like, you know, there's horrific instances that happen within that, and they all died together. So like,
Yeah, I remember that one Heaven's Gate in San Diego where they thought there was like a UFO was gonna come and rescue them or something, and I think they all committed suicide. The idea was the UFO was going to be able to resurrect them or something like that.
yikes.
But yeah,
Yeah.
people can psych themselves into some wild stuff. Yeah.
Yep. But then like typically that's not matched with, yeah, and there was this other guy who was like very reputable within the Pharisee group. You know, I mean, like there's not that reputable person who also goes along with that and like spreads it even further.
Good point.
Oftentimes that doesn't happen.
That's a really good point. The character makes a huge difference. The character that we soak in when we're reading the Bible, the character of these people does not match conspiracy theories. That's not the trip. It's not the trip of the author. We can see the authors have like humility. They point out things that are embarrassing to themselves and their peers. The people they interact with, all the people that they're talking with in general, there's a few scalawags, of course, but in general, the vibe is they're kind of obsessive about honesty and being honorable and straightforwardness and so on. So even if they were deluded, let's say they're sincerely deluded, they would not participate in a conspiracy. That's a total massive level beyond that. You know, conspiracy is you have a guilty mind. You're you're engineering falsehoods, right? Whereas if you accidentally believe something that was wrong, that's much more innocent. You know, you just made a mistake, right?
And this is all complemented from last week's facts of like the woman who reported this first, right? And how it was culturally back in the day not super well received. If it was like, if a woman claimed something, a lot of men would instantly start doing the fact checking, and like, you know, it's just not the easiest way to propagate news, right? Or like facts back in the day. So
that would have been a really poor choice if you just wanted to get everybody to believe it immediately, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah, if it were a conspiracy theory, you'd probably think that it started with a super qualified person, super qualified man who, you know, like that'd be the ideal choice that they would want to say, you know, to try to legitimize their message, is like say that this person is claiming it, not like, yeah, we heard it from these people. Like,
right. Precisely. Any thoughts on all this, Annette?
Well, my only two thoughts that I've been floating around is if Jesus had not raised from the dead, he wouldn't have had a glorified body. He wouldn't have been able to go through walls. He wouldn't have been the two men on the road to Emmaus wouldn't have they had a hard time believing. They thought he was a stranger. They didn't recognize him at first until he broke bread with them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Jesus, if he had just died or swooned or and like the video said, he would have died anyways because there was nobody there to put the wine and the oil in his body to heal up the wounds, right? Like the man on the road, this good Samaritan, the man came along and put oil and vinegar on his wounds to heal him up.
Mm-hmm.
But if it would have been possible for him to pretend that he died, and then just got out of the grave,
Mm-hmm.
then he wouldn't have. He would still be in his human body and form and not be able to go through walls to meet the disciples.
True.
And then I don't know. I missed something about Norman, what he said, but the fact that women were the first to meet and see Jesus and the empty tomb and the angels, and of course, women stories were not really well believed back then.
Mm-hmm.
Peter had to run down to the tomb to double check and see that what the women were saying was true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. All interesting thoughts. I was thinking, well, yeah, never mind. You have any other thoughts on this, Kyle?
I think what's going through my head right now is that I guess it kind of relates to what I said before, but I'm glad we're talking about this, and I'm glad we're also honing in on the conspiracy theory, because I think my whole life when I have had conversations with people about Jesus, they don't want to take it seriously, right? Like they don't need it, and more so than like these guys, there was a conspiracy theory around Jesus's death and resurrection. It's more so there's a conspiracy theory around the scriptures in general. Like somebody just like made these up, right? But I think, and through this study and other things I've learned too, like the scriptures they're so widely accepted as historical documents, that it really does come back to is Jesus who he claimed to be. And so when I look at these four naturalistic ways to explain away what happened and what is recorded in scripture, I think the conspiracy theory is, not is scripture made up, but was Jesus's death and resurrection made up? Was it a conspiracy? So I feel like in conversations with people, it's like, okay, you don't think the Bible is legitimate. It's like, well, it's pretty much across the board. These are historical documents that have been transcribed over time. Bye, Nat. Good night.
Bye.
I don't know.
Yeah, and so once you get someone to understand that, it's like, well, is Jesus who he said he was? And even like our faith, to me, it's so interesting because I feel like the Jewish faith in society almost like commands more respect than the Christian faith. I think Christians get a lot of flack, and sometimes for good reason. But like, because just Jesus is being who he said he was is what sets us apart from the Jewish faith. So man, just so much hinges on Jesus. So much hinges on Jesus. So it's yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of what's going through my mind, and I appreciate this discussion that's specifically focused on that. So
I like how you segmented it from like people who don't believe in the Bible and then, or don't believe in the integrity of the Bible, and then people that might believe a little bit more of the integrity of the Bible, like still a little bit iffy, but they believe maybe historically the events that are claimed to have happened, especially in the Gospels. We're kind of going to narrow it down to that right now. But yeah, so there's those people who like believe in maybe the historical legitimacy of the Bible. And then it's the people, those people that you can talk to, you can kind of help paint the picture of like, so if you believe in the historical integrity of this Bible, like what is holding you back from really like taking that leap of faith, like
right.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's a bias against the supernatural, which it's so pervasive. Everybody seems to talk that way, think that way. The media's that way. Everything's that way. But, as we've analyzed previously and we've discussed and saw, there's no reason to believe that the supernatural is impossible. In fact, the opposite is true. It's impossible to have the natural without the supernatural underlying it. So, but I think everybody has massive bias because everybody's constantly bombarded with this naturalistic mindset,
Going back to like those earlier videos that we started with, like, hey, if you can run them through the existence of the universe, that is pretty miraculous in the first place, right? So the miracle of, Jesus' resurrection, I think that's a little bit easier to believe in than like the creation of the universe. I think raising a body up from the dead is it wasn't even just Jesus, right? That's not the only instance of this happening. It was also that one guy, right? That one guy who was technically dead on a bed, and like Jesus rose him from the dead, rose him from the from death. I could see that being argued a lot more than Jesus's resurrection. I think there was a lot more highlight and references that we've been at least talking about recently, but yeah, short and simple. It's pretty easy to believe that miracle could happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and even like I was reading in Second Kings recently, Elisha raised someone from the dead. And so these Jews, believe in the Old Testament scriptures, I'm assuming that Elisha was able to do this. So this is like a thing, like the power of God can raise people from the dead, I think was something that was probably accepted by most Jews. I don't know.
Yes. In fact, the fact that Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead was part of all this hype that was leading up to him getting crucified, because he blew everybody's mind, and the people started really thronging towards him at that point. And that's what got the authorities all freaked out, because they said, they were conspiring about what do we have to do to get this under control. I can't remember the exact wording, but they're after he rose Lazarus from the dead, they're all like, this is getting out of control. We're going to lose control of this culture, paraphrasing, of course. But
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely not the first resurrection. And
But it was first without any assistance, right? I think that's like the biggest thing that is why we believe Jesus was so important, was like, it wasn't,
Good
you know,
point.
God working through someone else to raise Jesus from the grave. It was Jesus raising from the dead.
It was self-executing. That's a good point, man. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
He didn't have, nobody had to touch it. Nobody had to inject power from beyond, you know, it was just self-executing. It's impossible to kill God, so he rose up again. Something like that. Yeah. All right, we've been at it for a while. It's probably about time for me to get some prayer requests from you guys. What can I pray for you about? What can we pray for you about?
For me, just strength and courage, like just having to make some decisions and interact with people and trying to be nice and also like make the right calls and then stick to my gut. And I don't know, strength and courage.
Well, relate, trying to find that balance between standing up for yourself, but having aloha too, but you don't want to be, you don't want to let people muscle you around, you know. So I hear you.
Yeah, in a very professional sense. Yeah, sure. Yeah, nobody's bullying me.
Yeah, but you know, just through the chain of command, there might be stuff going on, whatever. Yeah, I hear you. All right, we'll pray for you on that. What do you have, Kyle?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know. I don't really have anything right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What about you?
Let's see. My relationship with my daughter. Aches and pains, you know, just that I would be able to hopefully be able to continue with the martial arts. I jumped into a Muay Thai class last week, the Jiu-Jitsu this week. I would love to continue if my body will hold up. So just that my body would hold up for that, and my relationship with my daughter, basically. All right, we'll go ahead and start praying. Heavenly Father, please bless the situation with Norman's strengthening. You know, please give him full strength and courage that he can make good decisions on the choices he has to make coming up, and life choices and work choices and so forth. Please let him be able to make good progress towards that 5-year vision that he has in mind, or if you have a different one in mind, please share that with him and get him on that track. But we just ask you fortify him with the strength and courage and knowledge, wisdom, gut, all that good stuff that'll help him make the best decisions for his life. And please just bless Kyle and Marley generally, and Waikiki Beach Gathering generally. And please let my aches and pains be better. Please let me be able to continue with the martial arts. Please bless my relationship with Sarah. And please bless the Waikiki Beach Gathering in general. Please let us be pleasing to you, God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, good seeing you guys. Have a great evening. And I'll see you again Sunday, if not sooner.
Take care. Bye.